As you know, we're doing a lesson on the Shema and how mindlessness and mindfulness meditation is what, in my opinion, much of the Shema is about, and I'm relating it to that. And we started off by talking about how the Shema is more, it's talked about as the most important prayer, but it's really not a prayer. It's mostly a statement of things to do, a declaration, right, of things to do to unify. And we're pointing that out here in these lessons, right? So we talked about the history of the Shema, and it's Deuteronomy 6, 4-9 in the first lesson. And then, of course, in the second lesson, we focused on the first three words in the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yud He Vav He, which mostly we say Adonai, because over the years, and we talked about it a little bit, the tradition is not to say Yud He Vav He, but to say either Hashem, meaning the name, or Adonai, Lord, in its place. And we'll talk further about that actually in our next lesson. But for today, just briefly, as a review, last week we talked about Shema, meaning hear or listen, to be something that on a deeper level is more than obey. It's like you could be speaking to your kids and say, hey, listen to me, take out the garbage, do your chores. That's the way many people or most people look at the Shema. Shema is saying, hey, listen to this, obey this, do these things, right? What I'm saying in lesson 2 is the word here also means I heard the wind outside my window. Did you hear that music? Listen to that music. So if we look at it from that perspective, Shema Yisrael, Yisrael meaning us, hear Yud He Vav He. What we're saying is, through the practice of meditation, these letters, these sound vibrations reveal themselves to us as we surrender and as we go from the conscious thinking level deeper and deeper and deeper in thought, deeper and deeper and deeper till we transcend thought. And then from the other side, sound vibrations are revealed to us. So that's what we mostly talked about in lesson 2, which will be up in a day or two as soon as we can get Jack going on that. So now I want to bring us to the second half of the first sentence. So the first half is Shema Yisrael, we'll say Adonai, Eloheinu, Yud He Vav He, Echad. So Eloheinu, Yud He Vav He, or Adonai, or Hashem, Echad, right? So as we look at the word Eloheinu, which is the next word in the sentence, it brings us to really the essence of the Semitic Kabbalistic mystical tradition, which the essence of it is that from this pure field of consciousness, this unified field of consciousness, everything comes into being. So one could say, in the ancient mystical tradition is a spiritual tradition, one can say from this place that is called in that spiritual tradition Ein Sof, which is God consciousness in everything, without end, Ein Sof, emanate, and from consciousness comes from pure silence, which is represented by the Aleph. So really the Aleph doesn't have a sound until the first vowel of its name comes in to play. So it comes from pure silence, and then it becomes Ah, which is its first vowel from the name Aleph, right? So Aleph represents that pure silence that consciousness grows from. So all of what we do is based on unifying within and without, masculine, feminine, above and below, the world of action with the inner world. All of that is unified with that pure consciousness. And that's the purpose of everything that we do. And the Kabbalists would say, from the Zohar, Lashem Yechad Kiddush Shabbat, for the sake of the unification of the Holy One, blessed be He, to unify the name Yud-He with Vav-He in a perfect union. So this is, for that sake, we have that unity, we create that unity. And from the Veda, Krishna says, Yogastha Guru Karmani. From this point of union, from unity, perform action. So the beginning of the Shema is absolutely that declaration. Hear, Shema Yisrael, listen, it reveals itself to you, and then it turns back into itself, into the Aleph. So that's the next word. Here, Yud-He, Vav-He, and then we have the next word, which is Eloheinu, right? And that is spelled Aleph, Lamed, He, Yud, Nun, Vav. So the Aleph is, the Yud-He, Vav-He is coming back into its unity in that pure silence in Aleph. So while this sounds a little complicated, it's not, because we've experienced it. We've experienced dropping into that pure silence, beyond your letter, beyond your thought, and then the letter revealing itself to you from the Aleph pure silence, right? That whole circle takes place, just like it's taking place in this Shema, in this declaration. Shema Yisrael, Yud-He Vav-He, Eloheinu. And then just that whole word Eloheinu, which is another name for the divine, is Aleph, representing that pure silence. Lamed is the great connector, right? So we have, how do we spell it? We spell it Aleph, Lamed, He. He is that space. He is a feminine energy. It's a receiver. And it's in the name, Yud-He, Vav-He, twice. Why? Because if you think of it as a receiver, as your body is a receiver, as your soul is a receiver, taking in your whole universal life energy is like a receiver and a giver, right? So we're all both masculine and feminine. We have that receiving and we have that giving. And the giving is with the Vav, the movement out, and taking in is with the He. Interestingly, according to the sages, two He's are because there's two receivers. There's a receiver at the beginning of the sending of the pure energy and consciousness. Just think of it like a water tap, right? So you have a water well. The water's coming up from the well. It has to go into something, into that channel that is the Vav. So the water goes into that channel through a receiver, the deeper receiver, or the above receiver, the above He. And then it comes out and into you, into your conscious thinking level, into who you are and what you are, through the other He. That's two He's. So it's really not complicated at all. It's very simple. It's that this pure silence and the mothers, and then the Yud is the catalyst that creates the bubbling of the consciousness up and the multiplying of that energy. And it goes through the Vav. It enters the Vav through the Hey, Yud Hey. Goes through the Vav and then enters through the Hey on the other side. So it's a beautiful motion of energy. It's just natural law is all it is. We're calling Yud Hey Vav Hey, but it's just energy, right? It's vibrational energy. So what the Shema is saying, it's a mystical, magical formula. The Shema is saying, listen, shut up and listen. And you'll hear. And make sure that you allow this hearing to return to itself into the Aleph. And as it returns to itself into that pure silence, it moves again outwardly. So we have the Hey and then a Yud. So he moves from the Aleph into that Hey and then energized again by the Yud. Eloheinu, Hey Yud. And so Eloheinu is a name that comes from Elohai. So we could stop this at the Yud, and that's a very holy divine name. Expressing what I just said, bringing that Yud Hey Vav Hey, unifying it with that pure silence of Aleph, and then connecting it through the Lamed into another Yud. But when we say Eloheinu, we say then that energy through the activity. So Nun is a motion energy, right? Through motion connection with the Vav, right? So you look at that letter, and it's all this movement, receiving, and giving of energy, right? Remember we talked about, I don't know which lesson it was, number 1 or number 2, something called gematria, which these letters have energies and they have sound vibrations. And since there's an order to them, they also have numbers, and that's gematria. And there's all types of gematria, and we're using, for the sake of this lesson, what's called mispar katan. Mispar katan is just what's small numbers. So we look at the numerical value of each of these letters, and we take the small numbers, meaning that if the numerical value is 100, we'll look at that as a 1. Or if it's 40, we'll look at that as a 40. Okay? So we do mispar katan with Eloheinu, we come up with the number 21, which is the same number as Ehyeh, which is another very holy name, vibration, very holy divine name, Ehyeh, which is spelled Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey. And this is, interestingly enough, in Exodus 3:12 to 14. This is what Moses hears from the divine through the burning bush. Remember that whole story? You might have seen it in the movies or read it in the Torah. This whole story. The divine says to Moses, tell Pharaoh, tell the people of Egypt that I am. And he uses the word Ehyeh. Ehyeh asher Ehyeh, right? I am who I am. And of course, this is, if you think about it, I don't know how you all started your meditation quest. We all have our spiritual journeys, but who we are is ultimately purely divine and pure consciousness, right? It's just connecting our natures and our actions and all of these things with that Ehyeh. And that also has a numerical value of 21. So Eloheinu, Ehyeh, 21. Totally connected, and the energies are connected. So then Yud He Vav He, Ichad. Ichad means one. It's an expression of unity. So that's the end of the first sentence of the Shema. Echad has a numerical value of 13. So some of you have taken the Sefer Yetzirah class, but you might know that all of these energies have groupings and numbers, but there are 12 what we call elementals, the elemental energies of creation. And when those are unified, we add the Aleph to it because they're being unified with the Aleph, right? Which has the numerical value of 1. Echad. So this whole first sentence is an expression of that unity, which is certainly what the goal is of all of our meditations, unifying. The word yoga, by the way, it really means union. It doesn't mean exercise or position or some kind of pants or any of that stuff. It means union. Union what? Union of the divine, pure, absolute consciousness with the field of action and relativity and nature and who we are, right? So this whole first sentence, in my opinion, is shut up and listen. Drill within, experience that oneness, allow that energy to reveal itself to you of Yud He Vav He, and allow it to circle back and be unified with Aleph, and that's what creates the one. Okay? So the next statement, Baruch Shem Kavod Malkato Le'olam Vayed, we'll talk about in our next lesson.